Hey everybody, welcome. First things first, got a slight issue. Think I've got a mouse problem. Now, fortunately, don't have a mouse touch wood problem here in the flat. It's more this kind of mouse. So the Apple Mouse 2, right way around, the Apple Mouse 2 to be correct. Well, actually not this one, these two. You may or may not be aware, but not so long ago I bought myself a new iMac. One of the very last generations with the old chip before the new MacBook Airs came out with the new M1 chip, which is quite frankly really bloody good. Having bought the new iMac, it came with a new keyboard. Now, the keyboard came with the Apple Mouse 2, which is actually pretty cool. It follows the styling lines that have preceded the usual Apple mice, and to be honest, it's relatively straightforward. You don't get the two buttons as you do on the Windows versions, but that's to be expected. It's Apple. It does have the ability to be charged through a lightning cable, which is nice because in the past you have to go around looking for frigging rechargeable batteries, and you know, that's just a real pain in the ass. But the problem I've got is that I like the trackpad. Now, for those of you that aren't sure what the trackpad is, it's this. It's a flat version of the Apple Mouse. Now, this is actually the first one, which I dearly loved. I mean, it's a bit dirty from being a bit overused, but I loved it. It's a good weight. It was a good incline, so when it's sat on the desk, you can actually see it comes off the ground a fair amount, and it's got a good sound. I don't know whether you can hear this. Maybe. It's got a good haptic feel when you are working with it. Generally, if you're going to do the slightly more intricate details, you probably want to use a mouse or maybe one of the big Wacom tablets if you're going into the designing space. But having the ability to just scroll around and use your fingers far easier on the mouse, for me, loved it. But when the new iMac came, it came with a new keyboard. I don't know whether you can see, but this has very much a round setup. So I bought something from 12 South, which held the keyboard and the trackpad together, so it just moved in one. The problem is, when I bought the new iMac, the keyboard was a slightly different design because the new trackpad 2 doesn't have the same design. Well, that was inconvenient, wasn't it? Because that then meant that I had to buy a new trackpad. Funnily enough, this one. This is the trackpad 2. So, what's the difference between the trackpad 1 and the trackpad 2? Well, as you can probably see, they're shaped slightly differently, they're designed slightly differently, they look slightly different, but they weigh about the same. Not that you really care how much they weigh. First impressions on the trackpad 2 are it's a lovely piece of kit. I mean, it sounds a bit silly to start saying a mouse is a lovely piece of kit. Well, I mean, the trackpad is, but it is very, very well designed. Very sleek, very clean. Probably the influence of Sir Johnny Ives. I don't know who invented the trackpad, but to be quite honest, I think they should be given a medal, or at least a blue Peter badge. One thing to note that's different from the first version is it doesn't have the storage for batteries, which is where the circular piece was. It now charges via lightning, so that makes things much easier, and you can just turn it on and off here with a green button. It seems a bit strange to do a video of the comparison between the trackpad 1 and the trackpad 2, but it's been bothering me recently, and I'm a bit geeky and I'm a bit nerdy. And the trackpad 1 was so good, it's got such a good haptic feel, I got so used to it, I like the angle. And then the trackpad 2 arrived, albeit, you know, I bought it, and at time of recording, I think they're just shy of £130. That's a lot of bloody money to spend on a trackpad. Anyway, the point is, the trackpad 2, the change in the design and feel, for me, I think has ruined it a bit. It's slightly harder to confirm. I don't know whether you can hear that. It's a far softer, far more subtle click and movement, whereas the first one is a definitive. The easy way to describe it is I cycle, and I have a nice road bike. I'm always intrigued by the electronic gears you get on the pro bikes. Now, one of the reasons why I've not looked at changing the setup on my bike is the electronic ones, you don't get the clunk and the click and the satisfaction of changing gear. Bit of a tenuous link, but that's exactly how it feels when looking at the trackpads. I like a good responsive feedback when you're working with a mouse. Although you might be sat there thinking, Brendan, what on earth are you talking about? It's a trackpad, it's a mouse. It does what you need it to do. Well, that's right. But bear in mind that we're all sat at home working more often. You might as well have a trackpad or a mouse that you actually enjoy using. So for me, yes, it's a nice looking bit of kit, and I love the fact that you can recharge it and you don't have to keep changing batteries, because to be quite honest, that is a pain in the proverbials. I prefer the Trackpad 1. Unfortunately, the Trackpad 1 has been cast aside into the shelf of oblivion, so it's been put on the shelf and I don't use it anymore. Would I buy the new Trackpad 2? If it comes with your new Apple Mac, fine. Would I spend the money having bought this, especially now? Probably not. If aesthetics and design is super important to you, then yes, you might want to look at it. But if you've got an Apple Mouse 2 that comes with your iMac or any of the other Apple computers, don't bother. If you've got one of the old trackpads, stick with it. Yes, it is nice and it fits in and it charges and it looks really cool, but is it worth the money in the upgrade? I don't think so. Which is a shame, because it is a beautiful bit of kit. But would I recommend this going forwards? Probably not. So do yourself a favour, don't spend £130 on the Trackpad 2, stick with your Apple Mouse or your Apple Mouse 2, whichever one comes free with your computer, and just save the money for next time. And that's it. That's my thoughts on the trackpads. If you have a Trackpad 1, stick with it. If you have a Trackpad 2, tell me what you think. As always, my name is Brendan and I'd love to hear from you. Please do make sure that you subscribe and click the like button. Just means that you'll get the notifications the moment any new content is released. Bearing that in mind, I am going to sit down and do some work, use the Trackpad 2 and try not to grumble too much. But it is a lovely bit of kit. Do yourself a favour, don't buy the Trackpad 2. With that, I'll see you very soon.